They're all dead.
Everyone dies sometime, kiddo.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. The ending of Lost is one of the most controversial and misunderstood finales in television history. So we're going to explain what exactly happened in that church, the whole purgatory thing, and why the survivors were not dead the whole time. This is all connected to the island and what happens in the final 2 seasons. This includes the unique magical attributes of the island and the wild time travel rules of the show. So here's why the ending of Lost isn't actually as terrible as you may think, and it all ties back to the show's true meaning, and it's not the countless unsolved mysteries.
There are no shortcuts, no do-overs. What happened, happened. Trust me, I know. All of this matters.
You see, a lot of people really dislike the ending of Lost, and many of them say it's because they were dead the whole time. But the thing is, they were not dead the whole time. So to understand what the final seasons in the church were all about, you really have to understand all of the flash sideways that take place during season 6. The show famously started with these flashback storylines that were interwoven throughout each episode, usually focused on a single character or two.
You don't know who you're dealing with. Don't ever tell me what I can't do, ever!
Now that changed at the end of season 3, when what we thought we were watching was a flashback, when the entire episode turned out to be a flash forward, taking place 3 years after the plane crashed on the island.
We have to go back!
We got many more flash forwards mixed in with the flashbacks after that. Then in season 6, the final season, we started getting flash sideways. Remember, in season 5, we followed 2 groups of characters in 2 different timelines, one in 1977 and one in 2007. Jack, who has become obsessed with undoing the events of the plane crash and saving the lives of everyone who's died so far, executes Daniel Faraday's plan to detonate a nuclear bomb over the powerful electromagnetic field that the hatch was built around.
They're building our hatch.
What hatch?
The one that crashed our plane.
The reasoning is that, by completely screwing with the timeline, that they'll create a paradox that stops the plane crash from ever happening. Season 5 ends with the bomb going off. Season 6 starts with Jack waking up in 2004 on Flight 815, and it safely lands at LAX. It seems like Faraday's plan worked. The nuclear bomb created a new timeline where everyone survives. But everything is just a little off. It's like an alternate universe.
Somewhere in the past, the timeline skewed into this tangent, creating an alternate 1985.
Desmond, who was shipwrecked on the island for years before Locke discovered the hatch, is now a passenger on the flight.
Do I know you from somewhere? I'm not sure.
Other things are even more different. Jen and Son aren't married. Hurley is a philanthropist. Jack has a son, stuff like that. Even weirder, it's not long before we see that this timeline is occurring at the same time as other events back in the original timeline. In that timeline, when Juliet sets off the nuke, Jack and the others were teleported back to 2007, and not the alternate 2004.
It was really confusing.
Yeah, well, get used to it.
In order to understand what's happening in the ending, in the final scene at the church, it is crucial that you understand what flash sideways are. Because eventually we realize that it isn't an alternate timeline at all. It has nothing to do with the nuclear bomb that goes off in the season 5 finale. That was a misdirect.
Hey, they tricked us!
So wait a minute, person, the nuke sent them to the future?
Well, not exactly, but it's good that you asked because it is one of the more confusing parts of the ending. But it's also very crucial to what happens in the last couple seasons. You see, the nuke had nothing to do with the flash sideways or anything about the church ending. The nuke was meant to go off and the survivors were supposed to go back to the present because it's all part of the time loop in Lost.
Time loop? There's time loops in Lost too? What else? Is there a multiverse? I bet there's a multiverse.
No, just time travel with a very clear paradox.
Is he talking about what I think he was talking about?
If you mean time-traveling bunnies, then yes.
So, at the end of season 4, Ben moves the island with the frozen wheel that is located under the Orchid Station. And yes, the island moves every once in a while, but using the wheel dislodges the island from the space-time continuum. And some survivors on the island are transported to different points in the past, but they're the only people on the island that hop around time. And there's a reason for it that we'll explain in a bit. A few key moments include 1954, where the survivors meet the others who killed American soldiers and took over their jughead, which is the nuke. Faraday tells the others to bury the bomb, which will be important later. And Locke meets Richard Alpert, which will prompt him to go find the younger John Locke.
May 30th, 1956, 2 years from now, that's the day I'm born. Tustin, California. And if you don't believe me, I suggest you come and visit me.
So the survivors are influencing their own past, setting the entire events of the show into motion. Afterwards, Locke goes to the frozen wheel cave to stop the time travel madness, but since the station wasn't built yet, he needs to access the cave from a well. But then there's another flash that sends the survivors to ancient times, back when the Egyptian statue was still standing. And more importantly, the well doesn't exist yet, so Sawyer just holds a rope that goes underground. And this might be the very start of the time loop, because the ancient inhabitants of the island will find this rope, dig the well, and discover the frozen wheel.
And then I'm going to attach that wheel to a system we're building. A system that channels the water and the light.
And this begins the chain of events that will play out in the show.
Time travel!
Afterwards, Sawyer and the others join the Dharma people in the 70s. 3 years later, the other survivors are sent to the 70s as well.
How and why?
Well, the island's kind of sentient and it sends them back because they all have roles to play on the timeline.
We were brought here for a purpose, for a reason, all of us. Each one of us was brought here for a reason.
These survivors always travel to the 1970s and influence the past. It is all part of the time loop.
Time, it's like a street, right? We can move forward on that street, we can move in reverse, but we cannot ever create a new street.
For example, Faraday is killed by his mother, and then she finds his journal and uses it to set a lot of things into motion in the future. Or Saeed shooting young Ben, so Sawyer and Kate bring him to the others to save his life, and then he joins them and causes the Dharma Purge. Basically, like how John Connor sends his father to protect his mom, they hook up, and that's how John Connor is born, so that in the future he could send his dad back to hook up with his mom.
Make a baby who grows up to be John, who sends always back in time to make a baby with John.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush.
Person?
Yeah.
You're terminating again.
Sorry, I'm looping. Anyways, it all comes down to the incident. Jack wants to blow up the nuke inside the hole where the hatch will be built because he's convinced that it will rewrite the timeline.
We think, we reason, we make choices, we have free will. We can change our destiny.
But the rules of time travel in Lost are that whatever happened, happened. You cannot change the past, they're all just playing out their predestined roles on the timeline. So Juliet setting off the bomb doesn't send them to the present, it happens because it was meant to happen.
So what did the nuke do?
Well, Dharma hit the electromagnetic pocket when they were digging, and now the world is ending. But the force of the nuke negates the energy, and it gives Dharma enough time to build the Swan Station where someone will need to push a button every 108 minutes to save the world.
I mean, we found some hatches and there was a button you had to push every 108 minutes or... Well, I was never really clear on that.
And decades later, Desmond will be too late, causing the Oceanic Flight 815 crash on the island. And then some of the survivors will go back in time to play their roles in the past, and the loop will keep going. So this is the point of the nuke. And this brings us to the ending of the show on the island. The Man in Black is trying to get off the island once and for all now that he's using the corpse of John Locke as a vessel. Jacob and his brother are essentially immortals, being born on the island in ancient times. Jacob became the protector of the island, and his job is to protect the light and ensure that it never goes out. The light at the center of the island is basically the nexus of life everywhere, and like the mother says,
and if the light goes out here, it goes out everywhere.
And the Man in Black transformed into the smoke monster after being thrown into the heart of the island. And ever since, he wanted to leave the island, but Jacob stopped him because the Man in Black wants to destroy the island, which of course would end the world. Jacob has been kind of preparing for this all along. He purposely sought out several of the main characters way ahead of time, sometimes decades in advance, as potential candidates for his replacement. Foresight is apparently one of the vague supernatural gifts that comes with being the immortal caretaker of the island.
He was pushing you, James. Pushing you to the island.
Though he used the lighthouse, and Jacob was aware of all the time travel stuff. This is how Jacob knew that the Man in Black would kill him at some point and that he needed a replacement. Eventually, Jacob chooses Jack and passes on the role of island protector to him.
Now you're like me.
Now, there's certain vague rules in place for all this supernatural stuff. The Man in Black can't kill the protector and vice versa.
One of these days, sooner or later, I'm going to find a loophole, my friend.
That's why he manipulated Ben to kill Jacob.
You found your loophole.
He also can't leave the island. However, all these rules go out the window if the island is uncorked. The island is sort of a barrier between our world and a realm of evil.
Cork is this island, and it's the only thing keeping the darkness where it belongs.
At the heart of the island, there's even a literal cork that plugs the gateway between the two, and it's surrounded by exotic matter or electromagnetic energy that will kill anyone who touches it. Desmond is the only one who's immune as a result of him being exposed to the massive release of electromagnetic energy when the hatch blew up. This is why he's immune to the effects of time travel when his consciousness hops between the past and the present, and the future for a bit.
That guy sees a future, dude.
He is the constant.
Rules don't apply to you. You're special.
So Jack and the Fake Lock have Desmond unplug the island, and the island starts crumbling and the whole world is about to end. However, it means that all the rules about Jack and the Man in Black no longer apply. The Man in Black can now escape the island, but now he's finally mortal and he can be killed. But so can Jack, and that is exactly what happens. They fight to the death. The Man in Black dies with some help from Kate, and Jack is mortally wounded. Since he's dying already, he doesn't care about the deadly energy at the heart of the island, so he restores the cord, seals off the hellhole, and saves the island. Before he dies, Jack makes Hurley the new protector.
But if someone has to take care of the island, if someone has to protect it, then it should be you.
Jack stumbles into the jungle and lays down to die. He doesn't die alone though, because Walt's dog, Vincent, is there by his side. Talk about full circle. The show began with Jack's eye opening as he laid in the jungle after his plane crashed. Vincent wakes him up. Now, 3 years later, he's watching another plane take off with Vincent there again. And the last shot of the series, Jack's eye closing.
See you in another life, yeah?
I'll see you in another life, brother.
Now remember, all of this really happened. This was not some shared fantasy that all the characters had before they died in the real world. All of the events that take place on the island really took place. The flash sideways we're seeing is actually purgatory.
You mean everybody was dead the whole time?
Yep.
They're all dead. They just don't know it yet.
But also, no, not at all, because that's how a lot of people misinterpret the ending, right? They think the island was heaven or purgatory or whatever, and that they were all dead the whole time, so then what's the point of even watching the show?
But what's the point of anything?
But they were alive on the island. A lot of them get killed eventually, sure, but they survived the plane crash and live for most of the series. The only time we're seeing purgatory is in the flash sideways of season 6. It's basically an extended epilogue for the show that we just don't realize at the time. One by one, though, the characters do start to realize this. The Purgatory Sideways timeline exists outside of time, like the TVA in Loki.
Well, there is no now here.
When Saeed's son and Jen died on the submarine shortly before this, they woke up in the flash sideways. Some of the characters died on the island in 2004 or so, while others lived long lives and haven't seen each other in a very long time. Like in one of the most touching scenes of the entire series when Sawyer and Juliet are reunited. Juliet died from the bomb going off at the end of season 5, but Sawyer presumably lived for decades on after that, heartbreaking over her loss. And by physically touching one another, they remember the lives that they shared together.
I figure I'm gonna have to do about 6,000 years before I get accepted into heaven. And 6,000 years is nothing in eternity terms. I can do that standing on my head.
Jack is the last character to really accept and understand all of this.
What is happening to me? Who are you?
I know, you don't understand, Jack.
Now, when he entered Purgatory, it's because he did just die in the real world. In the flash sideways, everyone meets at a church. This is because, now that they've all found each other, they can transition from purgatory to the true afterlife, heaven or paradise or whatever you want to call it. It's depicted as a bright white light, and that's all we know about the next world. Now, this whole purgatory situation is directly connected to the light at the heart of the island. The light is the source of life, death, and rebirth. And now the island sends them to this reality that is connected to the light, where they get to reunite as cosmic matter after they died and move to the afterlife together. And this is the reason why in Jack's first flash sideways at the start of season 6, the island is underwater. We're meant to believe that it's a new timeline, but it's a misdirect. The island is submerged because the light went out. So this is purgatory and everyone is dead.
This is the place that you all made together so that you could find one another.
People really misunderstood that ending, and it's kind of defined Lost as a whole since it ended, which is just a shame. Just because a show has a bad ending or a misunderstood ending doesn't invalidate everything that came before or ruin the entire experience. But also, Lost kind of did stick the landing, because it is an apt conclusion to the themes that Lost embodied throughout all 6 seasons. A big reason that Lost was so talked about was its unanswered questions. Yeah, we wanted to see them get off the island and find out what was in the hatch and all the trippy mysteries like the polar bear and the smoke monster, but that was all plot. The actual story of Lost was told through its characters, which is why it had such a large ensemble of fleshed out people portrayed by talented actors. But we also wanted to see these characters grow and evolve. It's why the flashbacks were originally so important. You see, the flashbacks are more than just backstory. They represent the people the characters used to be before the island. In a way, the immortality of Jacob, the Man in Black, and Richard symbolizes the survivors' past lives. Because these three are stuck, they don't age, they don't change. They're tethered to the island, unable to move on. Their souls cannot rest.
What I am is trapped. And I've been trapped for so long that I don't even remember what it feels like to be free. Maybe you can understand that.
Same way as the survivors are tethered to their past. Their faults, sins, fears, failures are like an anchor. So their past becomes immortal, forever preventing them from moving on.
You were all looking for something that you couldn't find out there. I chose you because you needed this place as much as it needed you.
The island becomes a metamorphosis for the characters. They learn to overcome their past by experiencing key moments of their lives with the flashbacks. We watch the journeys of so many characters. Jack originally started out the show as a man of science, which was contrasted by Locke's man of faith.
Why do you find it so hard to believe?
Why do you find it so easy?
It's never been easy!
They constantly butt heads throughout the early seasons of the show because their central philosophies are so black and white. But through Locke's sacrifice, Jack eventually becomes not just a man of faith, but the man of faith.
Because I remember how I felt last time I left. Like a part of me was missing.
We got pills for that, Doc.
We were brought here because we're supposed to do something, James.
And Jack did the one thing that he always wanted to do: save people. He saves the island, stops the Man in Black, and as he's dying, he sees his loved ones fly off into the sunset. When the plane first crashed, Jen and Sun were in a very unhappy marriage, despite being in love with one another. Now they reconnect on the island and are soon tragically separated. When Jen has a chance to escape the submarine, he decides to stay with Sun and die with her, because he never wants to leave her side again. Sawyer started out as one of the most selfish characters in the show, looking out only for himself.
We could all use a little hope.
If it's hope you're looking for, S.A., you're on the wrong damn island. So sure as hell ain't no hope here.
But he sacrifices himself on the chopper at the end of season 4 to save the Oceanic Six. His time with Juliet after that softens him even more, and he likely reconnects with his estranged daughter when he finally gets off the island in 2007. Ben finds redemption and meaning by helping Hurley protect the island, and Locke forgives him for strangling him to death.
I assume you're referring to the fact that I killed you. Yeah. Well, I just didn't have time to talk you back into hanging yourself.
And the Flash Sideways reinforces this idea. All the survivors are basically stuck in purgatory, trapped between life and death. They must learn to move on, accept their deaths, and celebrate their lives and go into the light, which can symbolize a rebirth or becoming part of something greater. But also, things come full circle for many of them as well. Sawyer, a lifelong con man, is a police officer in the Sideways verse. Juliet is a doctor helping people, which is what she thought she'd be doing when she was originally recruited to the island. Jack, who had plenty of father issues, is now a father, giving him an idea of what it must have been like from his dad's perspective.
Got to talking with this man at a bar in Sydney. Tells me he wishes he had the stones to pick up the phone, call his kid. Tell him he's sorry. He's a better doctor than he'll ever be. He's proud. He loves him.
What the Flash Sideways are really doing is reminding us why we followed all these characters in the first place. That's the main theme of the show. The island is a microcosm of the real world. The mystery box isn't solved because it's not about solving the mystery. It's about the journey of change and coming to terms with the past and no longer letting it hold them back from moving on with their lives. You see, the church scene is all about them moving on to the next life together.
But if we can't live together, we're gonna die alone.
And now that I know what's actually going on in the end, I kind of want to rewatch the whole thing.
All right, then let's do it. So guys, let me know what you thought of the ending of Lost down in the comments below. And special shout out to the writer of this video, Jack Piccone, and the editor, Pavel T. You can find all their social links below. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.